When we think about safety and wellness, we often think that it's a social issue. But what if we could harness the power of entrepreneurship and apply economics and business solutions to social challenges such as safety and wellness? Well, one Alberta company is looking to do just that. Hey there, you're listening to The Brief, an Alberta Better podcast series. I'm Brittany Belanger, and in this series, my co-host, Scott Crawford, and I explore Alberta's big challenges, celebrate stories of growth, innovation, and prosperity, and discover bold ideas to make life better for Albertans. On this episode, we're talking to Ashif Mawji, a man who wears many hats. He is a serial entrepreneur, philanthropist, venture capitalist, mentor, and community builder. And Ashif joins the show to discuss his involvement in co-founding the TELUS Community Safety and Awareness Accelerator, a first-of-its-kind accelerator that is focused on addressing the social and safety challenges facing the Edmonton community. From supporting entrepreneurs to protecting our communities, Ashif discusses the value of safety in business, his passion for entrepreneurship, and the opportunities for growth at a global scale in changing how we approach safety in our communities. Listen, if you like this episode and want to support our message and share prosperity, please be sure to head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts, subscribe, rate the show, and give us a quick review. Now on to the show.
Well, Ashif, thanks so much for joining us today. You're something of a legend in the Alberta business community. The impact that you've had on the tech ecosystem, on the venture capital ecosystem, and also on social good. Can you begin, just share with our listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and thanks for having us. What I do, why I do it, I like to start with the why. Moved to Canada from Kenya in 87, came here with nothing, but had really good fundamentals, from my parents and all the relatives that helped support us. And the one key thing we learned is to give back when we can. And so, everything I've done and continue to do, it's with that in mind. So no matter how much or how little you have, it's important to give back. And so for me, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada has been great in terms of the support system, other entrepreneurs that have lent me advice, guidance, etc. And the best thing I can do is give that back.
That's fantastic. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is social impact and giving back. But I do want to talk a little bit about your career journey too. Could you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. Again, back in Kenya, I was always an entrepreneur. I started at a very, very young age, and I used to sell watches at trade shows. So I always knew the concept of making money, price versus profit, what's the right price to charge, et cetera. And I always had an affinity to computers, specifically in programming. So graduated from NAIT and started my own consulting company in 92. In 95, I was part of a $60 million bid that we won, which kicked my company off from one person to over 100 in less than a week, I think it was.
From 1 to 100 in a week. Wow. Okay.
1 to 100 in a week. I learned very
explosive growth.
How to manage, how to do this, how to do that. And then started a product company. Anyway, it's been in tech. My last company that I sold, we're in 180 countries in every industry. So learned a lot and continue to learn every day.
Fantastic. And so now today you're the managing partner of the Scale Good Fund. Can you tell us about that fund and how you make investment decisions when it comes to social impact?
Yeah, so I do a lot of investments. I'm invested in about 110 companies worldwide, direct investments. I'm in 10 different funds. And so the Scale Good Fund was started because for me, it's easy to make money. And I say that with air quotes, just knowing tech, knowing, what will work, what won't work. I have a pretty good betting average there. And so it's easy to make money, but I believe we can make money and do good. And that's what Scale Good is about. It's about, we want to make money for sure, but we want to do it while making a great social impact. And so that's what the fund's about. It's looking for those companies that have that promise of good financial return, but also on top of that, how is it going to make the world around us better? Right? And so it could be environmental, it could be relating to healthcare, it could be relating to, really anything that improves the social impact.
Absolutely. Well, I believe and we believe very passionately in that idea, in two parts. One, that business has a role to play in being a force for good in the world. And also that the way that business works with profit can scale these good ideas incredibly, much faster than some other models could as well. So completely bought into that concept. I wanted to begin to talk to you a little bit about the Community Safety and Wellness Accelerator. And first to talk about some of the challenges. Earlier this year on this podcast, we had the chance to speak to Mayor Sohi in Edmonton about some of the challenges facing the city. In particular, one of the things we've heard from the mayor and heard from others is, there's overlapping challenges related to safety and downtowns that extend beyond Edmonton as well. From your perspective, how serious are these challenges facing our downtowns?
I think, Scott, that they are very serious. Stories have been told already. So if you look at, the history with San Francisco, Detroit, and, a whole slew of US cities, they went through this cycle. They've seen the results of it, with people moving out. I have friends in San Francisco that were living downtown, running prominent funds, et cetera. They have moved away from San Francisco downtown. Okay. Why? Safety. Why do you think we left Kenya? We left Kenya with a great lifestyle there, like a really good lifestyle. And we left Kenya with nothing because we weren't allowed to take anything back, right? Mm-hmm. So we left because of safety. And so that is an issue that downtown Edmonton and a lot of downtown cities have in Canada and the US. And so if we don't address that now, we're not going to attract talent because they work, live, play downtown. But if you don't feel safe walking outside or taking the LRT, then you're going to look for other options. COVID has taught us you can work remotely. So you might move somewhere else and still work for a large company because you have that ability to do so.
Yeah. And Edmonton has spent a lot of money on community and social development programs addressing this issue, but outcomes not exactly where we would expect with the level of investment. And I think it's about $7.5 billion. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that stat. And so you were the founder of the TELUS Community Safety Wellness Accelerator, and that's focused on creating business solutions to solve some of these issues. How did this accelerator come about? And, what was the catalyst to forming this organization?
You make some great points there, Brittany. I mean, if you look at the history, we've spent a lot of money, and you're right, $7.5 billion annually in Edmonton alone on these programs, right? Yeah, you got to think about that. $7.5 billion in Edmonton. And I'm not happy with the outcomes at all. Maybe some are. I am not happy with that. And so I look at history. And if you look at history, we've done the same thing more often. We've added more money, more people. But we haven't introduced innovation or entrepreneurship into the equation. And I've found in all the businesses I've been a part of, when I bring people from the outside, they tend to find solutions and do things way differently than I did because I was in the business, right? They saw it from a different lens. And I find that entrepreneurs have that creative thinking. They have that ability to look at a problem and say, you know what, you've been doing it this way. Maybe let's try it this way. And that's what this accelerator is about. It's about bringing these entrepreneurs from all around the world and giving them our community problems, which are the same across all cities in North America, especially, and saying, can you solve this? Right? And solving doesn't mean, it's not like saying we want to eradicate homelessness completely. No. Can we make a 20% dent in improving homelessness? That's a valuable thing to do. And that's what we're looking for.
So you just graduated your first cohort in July, I believe, and kicking off cohort number 2. Can you go into detail about this program, how it's set up, and what kind of companies are applying to the accelerator?
And graduating.
The theme is safety and wellness, and that's very broad. So safety could be anything from domestic violence, or if you think about people walking from one area of the city to another, just making sure that they're safe, could be any of that stuff, but also in the wellness. It's mental health, it's education, it's literacy, it's all the things that really help improve society. So that's what we're looking for around the world. We had companies that addressed hatred online, through Twitter and other social media speech. Cyberbullying is an example. We had companies that help those that are visually or not visually, well, we had a visually impaired company as well, but this is one for mobility impaired where, things that we take for granted. You go to a building downtown and you can get to where you want to go to. But if somebody's on a wheelchair, they can't unless there's a ramp. And so this platform tells you which buildings are suitable for that and what's the right path to take, right? So it's just stuff like that. That's the kind of solutions we're looking for. Anything that helps improve the world we live in, make it better. And then we're looking for things that make it scalable. So the challenges we have in Edmonton, we know other cities have that.
Right.
Can we make it work here so that those entities, those ventures can scale it and sell it across the board?
Have you seen any solutions come out of cohort one that you particularly excited about that really have kind of that opportunity for impact kind of immediately?
Totally. One example is Areto Labs, which 3 female founders from Edmonton and beyond handling online hatred and cyberbullying, right? They've already scaled. They've got revenues. They've launched their fundraising and it's gone really well. They're doing awesome. And I would say we had 19 companies, if I'm not mistaken, in the first cohort. At least 15 of them have already scaled in the sense of launching their platform, have customers, and so forth. So great track record. And, some of these companies are all the way from New Zealand. So Clearhead, Angela, is coming to Edmonton, not next week, but the week after. Okay. And she's already got customers lined up here. So from New Zealand, she's coming here. She's going to set up shop here. And that's the power of this accelerator.
We like to think that Alberta is very entrepreneurial. Do you think that that is real in all the businesses that you've spoken to through this accelerator? Do you think that that's driving a lot of this innovation, that entrepreneurial spirit in Alberta is really attractive to some of these founders?
It is, because some of these founders, like I said, come from different countries where they're not getting the same opportunities, right, to scaling. Whereas they're finding here, our community agencies are willing to take a risk, right? They're willing to try something different. That's the entrepreneurial spirit. They're willing to do that. And so for a new venture, one of the key things you need is your first customer, right? To help prove it out for you.
Right.
You need that customer, not to prove it out alone, but also to help you refine your product. We're getting that with the Alberta agencies that we're working with. They're all entrepreneurial. They all want to everybody wants to solve homelessness or addictions or mental health. Who doesn't want to? The benefit of having these agencies in Alberta is they've also got that entrepreneurial spirit within them saying, this is different. This is not something we've tried before. We're willing to give it a try. And that's what we have here.
That's powerful, because there can be a lot of inertia that keeps us doing things the way we've always been doing things. What a fabulous strike rate to see that so many of those companies are already seeing first customers and revenue. I wanted to pick up on something you talked about quite a bit there, scale. And you've scaled companies. Can you give us a sense of what's the opportunity for these companies coming out of the accelerator to scale globally, and how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, for sure, Scott. And Brittany mentioned earlier the 7.5 billion. So can you imagine we're spending that in Edmonton alone? Edmonton is a population of 1.1, 1.2 million, roughly. Okay. Scale that across Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, bigger cities, bigger spend, right? If we can solve some of these issues, even a 20% dent, these companies can scale their platforms around the world, because guess what? New York has the same problem with homelessness or addictions or violence, right? LA, and I could go on and on. So none of these cities have solved these problems. None of them. Okay. And that's why this is this is the first accelerator of its type in the world, right here.
Really?
Right. So yeah, the opportunity to scale is immense. And that's what these companies applying are looking at, because we also provide them with data that they are not going to be able to buy or get anywhere else. And so if you're using artificial intelligence and machine learning, your key fuel, your key ingredient is data. And getting the right data along with the right domain expertise and the right mentorship are ingredients that you really want, those ingredients. And we have them here. And it's a free program, thanks to the government.
And let's talk about that data as fuel. What is the opportunity? But also, let's be honest, let's talk about some of the risks with this data and bringing in machine learning and AI. So what are the opportunities and the risks of using this data for social change?
Yeah, the opportunities, again, are artificial intelligence has taught us that if you use the right data, okay, which is, meaningful data, relevant data, et cetera, data without bias in it. You use the right data and you apply ethics and morals in using that data, which is key, because you don't want biases introduced. You don't want things like that could cause harm. And so if you're designing it right, with the right people at the table, so you have data ethicists, you have people that look at things like, the question I like to ask is, just because you can, should, right? If you ask them that way, every step of the way, I think you end up with, not saying the perfect decision, but a much better decision. And so if you do that, you have the ability to make a meaningful impact in any social challenge that we have. And so that's what the data that we bring to the table, these community agencies, et cetera, There's ways to put it in the vault, if you will, using anonymization, but also using synthetic data, which is fictional data, right? You can use real data to create synthetic data, which means everything about me is put into this platform, but there is no way anybody would be able to identify it as me because it's done using synthetic data creation. You can do that. And that's powerful. And as you know, Alberta is known for its AI ML expertise. We're top 3 in the world. So using those practitioners, using that data, using these entrepreneurs that come in from all over the world, we have the secret sauce to making this work.
Mm-hmm. And that's a message that we can't say often enough to just, remind Albertans and other Canadians and folks who listen to this podcast that this is a place that has global level expertise in AI and ML. So Ashif, tell us what's coming next for the Accelerator and for these companies.
Well, next is now, as with anything else, we need to prove that it's working, right? So we had our first cohort, they graduated, many of them went on to raise money, to get new customers. Those are all wins. We need to keep tracking that. We need to show everyone that it's working. Now, the impact on challenges that we have, whether it's homelessness or domestic violence or addictions, that's not going to be measured in the next 3 months. That's an annual at best, right? So we're going to keep measuring those things. And so the measurements that we're putting into place, the metrics, the whole process, that's something that's being worked on as late as this morning. There was a call on that, right? So it's being worked on because we want to get it right and we want to keep improving it. So that's one thing. The second thing is attraction. We want to bring these companies to Alberta. And now we don't want to say a condition of joining the Accelerator is that you have a presence. No, we don't want to do that. We want you to come here because you want to come here. And so that's what we're doing, is showing them why Alberta is going to be the best for them. And so that's an ongoing thing. So introducing them to new customers, to new partners, et cetera, funding sources and so forth. So when they see it, and then what we want them to do is go and tell all their friends in New Zealand or in Israel or wherever they came from, saying, you know what, you should look at Alberta. This is what it's done for us, right? So word of mouth is the best way to promote, as you know, for any business. And so that's what we want to get to.
Yeah, fantastic. I want to zoom out a little bit and kind of pick up where we had started our conversation. You talked about, your investment philosophy and the importance of doing good and having that social impact while we're building profitable companies. So what is your view of the role of business and or economics in improving those social outcomes and solving social problems? Why do you think it makes sense for profit-seeking businesses to get involved in something like community safety and wellness, as a business opportunity?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Brittany. I mean, if you think about it, you could have a not-for-profit that's doing that, okay? But a not-for-profit will need funding. So either they're raising money or they're counting on government grants. And so that has finite possibilities. Whereas if you're creating an entity that is, self-sustaining, if you will, it's self-funded through revenues, et cetera, there's a higher chance of success for a venture like that, right? And that also attracts the best talent you can have, innovators, et cetera, researchers from all around the world, because you'll need to pay them. If you can pay them well, they will come here. So that's why I think a for-profit entity that's struck to solve some of these challenges will have a much higher level of success than a not-for-profit. It has a higher chance of getting funded. Venture capitalists and so forth, don't typically fund not-for-profits. They fund for-profit entities. So again, higher chance of funding, better talent, like all those ingredients that you need to be successful, you have a much better opportunity in a for-profit company.
Yeah, you were talking about that company from New Zealand already has customers here. So there is this big commercial opportunity in solving some of these problems, but the entrepreneurialism and the innovation is kind of needed to support it. And that's why I'm really excited about this Accelerator, because I think it brings that perspective to it and supports these companies in scaling and creating solutions for these challenges.
Exactly. And, if you look at the millennials that are graduating from my universities today, they all want to improve their career. They all want to further what they're doing. But if you give them a choice of working at company A that is really just focused on give them that career advancement, or company B that can give them that career advancement and make a social impact, which one they're going to.
And speaking as a millennial on this podcast, that's 100% right. I would rather take a lower paying job any day if it meant that I could actually have an impact on my community rather than making gobs and gobs of money with almost no kind of social impact.
And to your point, Brittany, I think these for-profit social impact companies can pay you exactly the same as that other company that doesn't have the social impact, right? So it's not even about reducing salary. It's about, okay, well, let's make a difference collectively. And why are these companies able to pay you more or pay you the same as somebody else? Is because if you're going into work every day, fully engaged, because you're all working on that impact, you're going to produce a lot more. Doesn't mean you're going to work a lot more. You're just going to deliver better.
100%. It comes down to that triple bottom line, like people, planet, profit. And that's something that personally aligns with my values. And I know BCA it sits within that as well.
Exactly.
The shared prosperity concept. Ashif, I'd like to explore one other aspect of this, which is policing. A lot of what we're talking about here is safety issues, substance use issues, houselessness issues, and this intersects with policing. And the Edmonton Police Service is one of the partners in this accelerator, and you're also the chair of the Edmonton Police Foundation. I guess the question, to put it bluntly, is, as a society, do you think we've been asking police services to be too much, to be the answer to all these problems themselves? I'm interested in your perspectives on that.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Scott. And I think you're right, because they become our first responders, whether we like it or not. Somebody's on the street doing something, you are walking down the street, you're not a mental health professional. You can't tell if that person's on drugs, if that person has some challenges from a mental health standpoint. You don't know. You're going to call 911 and say, person A is doing whatever. The police are the first people called, because again, the 911 operator doesn't know. Is this a healthcare risk? What is the issue? They don't know. So the police become the first responders. Now, can we train them to do everything? It's kind of like you can train them on things, but they're not going to be experts in mental health. Like, it takes years to become an expert in mental health. So we are making them the first responder, but they're not really fully equipped to do all those things in the most efficient way. But because they are the first responders, they have to go there and assess. And so I think that's where technology can help. And they can look at it and go, we need somebody for mental health. And now we're launching new programs, as you know, in the city of Edmonton, where police are accompanied by social services, as an example. And so from a safety standpoint, they can be there to make sure nothing goes wrong. And I've never experienced this, but sometimes when a person's on meth, as an example, they're very irrational. They have no idea what they're doing. So whether they want to or not, they could be very harmful. And so if you don't have the right person with the right equipment to help stop, like, the social worker from being harmed, then you have tragedies. And that's what happened in Baltimore, where social workers got killed because there was no police there, right? And so we need to be very careful. I know we talk about we need to send the right people. Yes, you need to send the right people. But in these situations, having the police there as well is very important. Otherwise, we could have issues like what happened in Baltimore.
Right. Asking each person to play their best role for what they're trained for. Totally support that.
So as we kind of come to the end of our conversation here, I have two final questions for you. The first one, think about kind of policy. And if you could wave a magic wand, what's that one policy change that you might advance that, in 10 years from now would make Edmonton, would make Alberta a safer place and a more attractive place to do business, to live, to build a career, build a life?
Great question, Brittany. And I go back to why we left Kenya. We had the best in healthcare. We had doctors that would come to our house. Best in education. When I moved here, I was in grade 10 in Kenya. I came here, and all the way to grade 12, literally could have slept through school. So what I was doing in grade 10 there was grade 12 here. So best in education, best in healthcare. We had arts, we had all that wonderful stuff. Great climate. It was hot every day, right? We had the game park. We had an amazing life. What did we not have? We didn't have safety. Dad's best friend got killed. He was sitting out in his car. His wife was shopping at an outdoor market. Somebody came, shot him, didn't even ask for the car, just shot him, killed him, threw his body, took the car. All they wanted was the car. It showed the value of life. And so to me, it's safety. We say safety first. There's a reason for that. Once we have safety, the rest falls into place. We can attract the best talent. We can do all those wonderful things because we're humans. We always care about our safety. That's our first natural reaction. Is you're always threatened, right? If you see something coming, that's your gut reaction. So if we feel safe, we will live here, we will grow here, we will work here, and so forth.
Fantastic. What's one idea or insight that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I would say it's about embracing entrepreneurship. As a parent, we have 2 kids, and I always hear said to you think about your kids and go, well, I'd like them to be a doctor or a teacher or a firefighter or a police officer or whatever. And I've rarely heard somebody say, I'd like my daughter or my son to be an entrepreneur. It's just, you don't hear that. I think for us, we need to start that entrepreneurial education at a very young age. In the K-12 curriculum, it needs to be embedded. It needs to be just like math or English or social studies. It needs to be embedded in it. And it's not to say that everybody should be an entrepreneur. It's not about that. But everybody should have entrepreneurial skills, that creative thinking. We can then solve issues around cancer, around all these things that we've always thought are impossible. But if you had that innovative and creative thinking, anything's possible.
Love to see that. Yeah, we're big believers that there should be some component of entrepreneurial education for every student that graduates from high school in Alberta, probably from elementary school too at some level. So in complete agreement. And thank you, Ashif, for your time today and your thoughtful answers to the questions.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Brief, an Alberta Better podcast series. This podcast is a production of the Business Council of Alberta, and you can learn more about us at businesscouncilab.com. And we'd love to connect with you on social media. So give us a follow at BizCouncilAB on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Finally, don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. Give us a quick review. Your support helps us to keep making more episodes. Alberta Better is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every other Tuesday. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.